Can you believe a global music icon could be the mastermind behind a web of sex trafficking, coercion, and racketeering right under Hollywood's nose? This isn't a thriller movie plot. This is the real-life federal trial of Shawn Diddy, Combs. And what's unfolding in a New York courtroom has the potential to shake the entertainment industry to its core. You've heard his name on the charts. Now, you're hearing it in the same breath as words like criminal enterprise, coercion, and forced labor. Welcome to one of the most shocking celebrity trials of the decade. For over 2 decades, Diddy was untouchable. The multi-platinum records, the clothing empire, the celebrity relationships, everything painted the picture of power, luxury, and control. But behind the scenes, prosecutors now allege that control wasn't just about music or business. According to federal allegations, it was about manipulation, violence, and silence. And as each witness takes the stand, the shiny exterior of a global superstar is cracking open to reveal something much darker. In this trial, officially a federal racketeering and sex trafficking case, the stakes are colossal. On one side, a prosecution team carefully unraveling years of alleged abuse, armed with testimonies, digital evidence, and even surveillance video. On the other, a high-powered defense led by legal heavyweights who've scored major courtroom wins. And right now, despite the damning accusations, the defense seems to be landing punches of their own. According to legal insiders, some jurors are even starting to lean in Diddy's favor. How is that possible? Let's set the scene. It's day 20 of this trial. The prosecution hasn't even rested its case, yet the defense hasn't wasted a single moment. Through sharp surgical cross-examinations, they've poked holes in witness credibility, picked apart timelines, and exposed inconsistencies. And in a case where public opinion was nearly set in stone, the moment Cassie Ventura's explosive lawsuit went viral, this shift in courtroom momentum is nothing short of astonishing. In a recent breakdown on the Sidebar podcast from Law and Crime, trial attorney Ben Chu, famous for defending Johnny Depp, shared his insights. His take? This case might all come down to closing arguments. Because while the prosecution is laying out a long list of disturbing allegations, the defense is fighting fire with precision. Case in point, the alleged incident where Diddy dangled a woman named Brianna off a 17-story balcony. Sounds horrifying, right? But under cross-examination, it turned out Diddy may have been in New York at the time, a continent away. That single detail could shift the entire narrative. And then there's Cassie, the prosecution's star witness. But in court, the defense threw every contradiction they could at her, from text messages suggesting enthusiasm for freak-offs, to her own admission of consensual sex with Diddy even after the alleged assault. The defense is painting a picture, not of a monster, but of a flawed man in a complex relationship, one where the lines of power and love blur and nothing is as simple as it seems. So what's really going on? Is this a slam dunk case of criminal abuse hiding in plain sight? Or a cautionary tale about how fame, relationships, and federal charges can create a storm of confusion? This is not just a celebrity trial. It's a referendum on what we believe about consent, coercion, and credibility in the age of power and influence. Buckle up, this case is far from over. What if the very person who promised to make you a star was also the one who held the keys to your silence, your pain, and your downfall? That's the disturbing entry point into the world surrounding Shawn Diddy Combs, and it's where many of the women who now testify against him found themselves drawn into a life of luxury and power, only to discover something far more sinister behind the curtain. From the outside, Diddy's world looked like a dream. Private jets, million-dollar penthouses, celebrity entourages, and promises of fame. But as courtroom testimony reveals, stepping into that world was not a fairy tale. It was a trap. Cassie Ventura, a rising pop singer and the prosecution's alleged victim number one, entered Diddy's orbit not just as a romantic partner, but also as a protege. She was young, in love, and chasing a music career. It was a textbook entry into the power dynamics that define so many abusive relationships. But this wasn't just about romance, it was about control disguised as opportunity. According to Ventura's testimony, it started off with charm and gifts, love bombing at its most textbook form. But behind the scenes, a darker system was being established. Ventura describes an environment where Diddy slowly and strategically separated her from her autonomy, pressuring her into freak-offs with commercial sex workers, allegedly drugging her, surveilling her, and manipulating her through affection, fear, and financial dependency. Now here's where it gets strange and dangerous. On the stand, Cassie spoke about a text she sent during this time. "I'm always ready to freak off, LOL." The defense wasted no time in flashing this message before the jury. Their argument? This wasn't coercion. This was consent. This was enthusiasm. But here's the twist. The prosecution says that message wasn't real consent. It was survival. Cassie wasn't texting out of love or lust. She was texting out of fear. And as academic experts like Dr. Don Hughes explain, these kinds of contradictions are exactly what trauma bonding looks like. In trauma relationships, victims sometimes perform compliance just to stay safe. On social media, people are divided. One viral post read, "How can you be in love with someone and claim they trafficked you?" Others fired back, "You don't get to define someone else's trauma." And then there's the timeline bombshell. During cross-examination, the defense pointed out that Cassie's original statement said an alleged rape happened in August 2018. But in court, she said September. For the average person, that might seem like a trivial detail. But in court, it's ammunition. The defense used it to cast doubt on her entire story. If you can't remember when something happened, how can you be sure it happened at all? Legal. Commentators call this the domino of doubt. One crack in the timeline, and suddenly every memory becomes suspect. But experts in trauma testify the opposite. Memory doesn't work like a database. In cases of high stress or abuse, the human brain often records fragments, not timestamps. From there, the story only grows more complex. We meet Brianna McNolan, another woman who entered Combs's sphere, not through music, but through friendship and proximity to Cassie. She wasn't just a bystander, she was allegedly dangled from a 17-story balcony by Combs himself. Let that image sink in, 17 stories. But here's where things get even more bizarre. Brianna testified she tattooed the date of that event on her neck as a reminder to stay sober and not go back. That single fact caught fire online. One user tweeted, "Tattooing your trauma? That's either the most powerful thing I've ever heard or the saddest." Yet, in court, her testimony unraveled when the defense produced a hotel bill showing Combs was in New York at the time of the alleged attack, 3,000 miles away from the LA balcony in question. So who do we believe? And more importantly, how? Do we understand what believability even means in a case like this? One of the most debated phrases in this trial is, "I can't agree with you." It's the line Brianna used again and again when defense lawyers tried to trap her with contradictions. Was it defiance? Was it confusion? Or was it the symptom of someone recounting trauma through fog? The jury isn't just evaluating facts, they're evaluating human behavior. And in the age of TikTok and Twitter, every odd phrase becomes a meme, every contradiction a headline. Hashtags like "believe women" clash with due process daily. Inside Combs' world, things weren't always violent, but they were almost always controlled. According to multiple accounts, assistants weren't just staff. They were allegedly participants in the system. From scheduling freak-offs to acquiring drugs to managing Combs' volatile moods, these individuals, willingly or otherwise, helped maintain a closed loop of influence. Witnesses have testified to burner phones, NDA threats, and even surveillance tape bribery. The defense says it was just the chaos of celebrity life. The prosecution calls it criminal enterprise. Legal analyst Jesse Weber noted something chilling. This is a domestic violence case dressed up as a RICO action. That phrasing has sparked debate on legal forums across the country. Some say it minimizes the organized nature of Combs' alleged behavior. Others argue it reflects the challenge of prosecuting celebrity abuse under traditional frameworks. But one thing is clear. Every witness stepping forward isn't just describing an event. They're describing a culture, a closed, toxic system of power built on silence, seduction, and survival. And yet not all witnesses crack under pressure. Jane, whose full cross-examination is still underway, told the court she stayed with Combs long after the abuse because she felt trapped. She wasn't just a girlfriend. She was allegedly a participant in sex events, a recruiter, a handler, and a victim all at once. It's the contradictions that baffle people. How can someone plan a sex party and still claim coercion? That's where trauma theory and courtroom logic collide. What's perhaps most shocking in this initial phase of the trial is how ordinary the entry into this system seemed. Cassie wanted a career. Jane wanted stability. Brianna was a friend. None of them imagined that walking into Combs' empire would become the start of a courtroom saga watched by millions. But here they are, years later, sharing texts, memories, and scars in public. And with every cross-examination, the line between truth and narrative blurs just a little more. This is just the beginning. The environment was set, the players were drawn in, and the rules, unspoken and ever-shifting, were already in play. Welcome to the world of Shawn Combs. What starts as glamour ends in gaslight. And as the jury listens, the world watches. Imagine stepping into a world where fame, money, and charisma blur into a system of psychological chains, an environment so intense that survival itself becomes the only goal. That's precisely what multiple witnesses describe in Shawn Diddy, Combs' inner circle, a highly orchestrated machine of seduction, surveillance, and suppression. It started subtly. Late-night texts, private jets, luxurious getaways, all the makings of a dream. But behind the velvet rope, something far more calculated was taking shape. According to Cassie Ventura, warnings came in whispers. Don't tell him about Kid Cudi. It would be too dangerous. That line alone raised eyebrows online, fueling threads like docket victims speak up and sparking debates on whether fear or false memory shaped the accounts. What's remarkable is how the defense expertly atomized these allegations. During cross-examination, Cassie was confronted with explicit text messages like, "Baby, I want to freak off so bad," supposedly sent months after an alleged rape. A chilling contradiction. Was this enthusiastic consent or coerced messaging as a survival mechanism? The transcripts reveal a critical phrase. "I'm just saying what I have to say. It's all about keeping it calm." That kind of statement lit a firestorm on social media. Is it trauma bonding or manipulation 101? Academic forums lit up within hours. Trauma bonding is real, readers argued. Consent isn't static. This case sits squarely at the intersection of psychology and law. Then came the testimony of assistant and bodyguard testimonies. They weren't stylists. They were operators in the system. One witness described burner phones used to coordinate encounters and associates who handled the logistics of meetings, drugs, even escort arrangements. The defense downplayed it as organized chaos typical of celebrity entourages. But the prosecution countered, evoke the RICO framework. This wasn't chaos, it was a criminal enterprise. Online, legal observers debated violently. Celebrity, control or RICO grid? Trending hashtags like Diddy RICO started popping up on X and TikTok, each post earning millions of views overnight. Now let's zero in on the balcony incident involving Brianna McNolan, allegedly dangled from a 17-story height. On the stand, she said she was scared to report it, and to remind herself of her resolve, she even tattooed the date on her body. That dramatic act, tattooing trauma, went viral in its own right, igniting 1,000 TikTok takedowns. Tattooing. Your fear? Was the question. But prosecutors say it shows the depth of threat and psychological trauma. The defense, however, pulled a hotel receipt placing Combs in New York at that exact time. Seems like a plot twist, but social media exploded with one meme that said, "So was it stock footage or real life?" The academic debate? Memory versus metadata. Laptop law watchers weighed in. Metadata isn't always definitive. Should it override human testimony? The online courtroom of social opinion erupted. In the transcripts, a bizarre reveal. Bodyguards allegedly bought the tape of Combs dragging Cassie in a towel across a hotel hallway, then reportedly paid $100,000 to suppress it. According to the prosecution, that's bribery. The defense framed it as just standard crisis control PR. Online, tabloids ran wild. Diddy bribed to bury tape, but legal experts noted it's not unprecedented in celeb circles. Still, the optics were shocking. One commentator wrote, "If it's true, that's not crisis PR, that's RICO territory." This tension between damage control and criminal cover-up sparked furious debate in legal blogs daily. Another layer, allegations of forced labor and drug trafficking. Transcripts show witnesses were pressured into distributing controlled substances to comply or to ensure loyalty. Cassie told of being dosed so she couldn't fight back. The defense countered, it was therapeutic or recreational wellness culture common in entertainment circles. Their argument, Diddy was just offering support, not sedation. Online, forums split into, "This is drugging people" versus "It's celebrity self-medication, calm down." But the prosecution emphasized that involuntary drugging for control is part of the trafficking definition. That distinction echoed through academic articles and policy discussions about the evolving definition of trafficking. And then, experts. Dr. Don Hughes testified extensively on trauma bonding, love bombing, financial control. His testimony contextualized why victims stayed and even praised their abuser, because psychologically they needed to survive. The defense attacked his credentials, branding him a theory merchant. That sparked a collage of heated threads on LinkedIn and Reddit. Is trauma bonding legit, or just woo-woo psychology? Legal scholars jumped in. Trauma bonding is recognized in abuse cases. But can it hold up in court? The jury, the commentary whisper goes, is weighing expert versus evidence, and it's not easy to parse. The courtroom drama peaked when defense attorney Nicole Westmoreland pounced on Brianna's inconsistencies. "You cannot be in California and New York at the same time," she said, highlighting the physical impossibility. Brianna answered over and over, "I can't agree with you." That line, haunting in its ambiguity, sparked an entire subculture of memes. "I can't agree" merch, "I can't agree" tic-tac videos, and viral remixes remixing those three words in haunting loops. But psychologically, the answer was complex. Trauma can scramble memory. Could such an answer reflect confusion rather than deceit? Online psychology forums debated whether "I can't agree" is a marker of trauma or evasive testimony. One bizarre twist. Dawn Richard, former member of Diddy's Dirty Money, changed her story about whether he threw a frying pan or eggs at Cassie. A frying pan seems violent, an egg seems silly. Which one happened? On social media, people mockingly polarize, it's a skillet or omelet incident, yet research shows that such discrepancies are common in trauma survivors who reconstruct events in fragments. The question, does consistent detail matter more than truth, echoes in university seminars and psychology courses. the court transcript itself. There is a real material difference between a frying pan and an egg. That phrase is sure to make it into law school classrooms as a case study in the fine line between credibility and memory decay. Here's perhaps the most unnerving part. Witnesses say they still maintained contact with Combs long after alleged abuses, posting on his birthday, thanking him on Instagram, praising his kindness. One mailed him a sweatshirt offer post-trauma. Was that love bombing, a survival strategy, or simply human complexity? Social media exploded with two sides. That's Stockholm Syndrome versus online facade, trauma posting to keep peace. The transcripts show a pattern: public praise, private anguish. It's a recurring theme. One narrative on the stand, another in direct messages. The result? Jury signals could shift based on what they believe, the external brand or the internal wounds. Throughout, prosecutors keep hammering, this isn't glam or art. It's about forced labor, kidnapping, sex trafficking, arson, bribery. The list goes on. Defense argues it's just messy celebrity life. But as the transcripts reveal, each piece, texts, metadata, tattoos, expert testimony, is a brick in a sprawling psychological labyrinth. Social media tags like, systems of control swirl, legal dramas trend, and the world watches to see if narrative dominance falls to expert theory or cross-examination charisma. What's certain, Combs' world wasn't just fame. It was a curated system, one built on dependence, fear, and spectacle. And in this ongoing trial, the fight is over whether that system was entertainment or criminal. The ultimate question behind it all: is trauma-based testimony credible enough to topple an entertainment empire, a culture built on power and performance? And as the online world debates, no answer feels satisfying, just increasingly complicated. Imagine waking up one morning to find your life ripped apart, your name splashed across headlines, your career evaporating, your mental health in free fall. That's the brutal reality faced by Cassie Ventura when her November 2023 lawsuit went public. She testified, "When your lawsuit was publicized in November 2023, you understood that his career was ruined at that point, right?" Cassie quietly nodded. "I could understand that." And suddenly a star is shattered. It's the kind of crushing fallout that sends shockwaves across the entertainment world. But here's something odd. In the midst of this career collapse, Cassie's texts from around that period show her still exchanging intimate messages with Combs. Phrases like, "Can't wait to freak off," aren't the kind you expect from a woman who just destroyed her abuser's image. That strange disconnect fueled wildfire debate on Twitter and TikTok. One user screamed, "How do you cry? Abuse and still want more sex?" Another fired back, "Hello, trauma bonding." Across the trial, defense lawyers have repeatedly pounced on these contradictions, highlighting that continued contact, birthday posts, rent payments, all hint at normalcy, not coercion. Meanwhile, academic voices stepped into the fray. Is it manipulation or just messy human behavior? Some professors argued in op-eds that labeling ambiguous relationships black and white does a disservice to victims. But on Instagram, hashtags like "still in love" and "hurting" trended for days. Let's zoom out. These consequences aren't just emotional, they're professional. Cassie admitted Combs' lawsuit essentially ruined his career. But it also upended hers. Once seen as his muse, she became the target of scrutiny. Social media was merciless. Every post, every slip-up was evidence, real or fiction. And all the while, rumors swirled. Cassie couldn't get a record label or booking because she was that girl. People debated, is she collateral damage or a conscious participant? Now, let's talk about Brianna, who tattooed the date of her alleged balcony incident as a sobering reminder to stay sober and not go back. That one decision, inked in flesh, magnified her emotional scars and upended her career trajectory. She lost jobs, privacy, and trust. Yet in court, her story faltered. Defense attorneys produced hotel bills of Diddy being in New York at the time of the LA incident. The amazement. She tattooed a date and still got it wrong. On Reddit, someone wrote, "Tattoo your trauma, then your brain betrays you." It became a viral debate in academic circles. Does trauma memory store precise facts or only emotional impressions? Meanwhile, Jane, whose cross-examination is still unfolding, has also experienced monumental fallout. She testified Combs paid her rent, lawyer, and was still partner weeks before his arrest. That dynamic sparked intense backlash. People posted screen grabs of him paying her rent with captions like, "He's still buying silence." Others defended her honesty in the face of power imbalance. But there's no doubt, her career, identity, and very home have shifted under this weight. After going public, job offers dried up. One source on LinkedIn said, "Suddenly you're polarizing, not marketable." That's the cruel reality for alleged victims of powerful abusers. Another jarring detail. Mia, a former employee who accused Combs of sexual assault, posted on Instagram praising him after the alleged incident, calling him one of my greatest friends. That public praise after trauma sent fans into a spiral. How can you say thanks after rape? Tumblr blogs exploded. Yet psychologists quietly weighed in. Sometimes survivors create public facades to protect themselves. Online, the divide was clear. One side saw betrayal, the other saw survival. Each of these testimonies reveals career consequences that extend far beyond personal despair. These women risked public shame, loss of livelihood, emotional collapse, all in service of telling a truth that's messy and non-linear. And in the courtroom, those risks are turned into evidence by both sides. The defense uses it to cast doubt. The prosecution uses it to illustrate coercive artistry. Academic press seized on it. Some argue that legal frameworks must evolve to accommodate victim behavior that doesn't fit neat narratives. Think tanks released papers titled "Incoherent Testimony and Credibility, A New Legal Frontier." Myriad legal academics debated whether cross-examination should allow for trauma-based memory gaps. One viral op-ed on Medium said, "Asking Claire to remember tiny details isn't empathy, it's legal cruelty." Yet, critics argued, the courtroom needs certainty, not speculation. This was no longer just about Diddy. It was a hotly contested moment for victims' rights, public empathy, and legal reform. All of this erupted within the career fallout of these women. Cassie's music paused. Brianna's modeling contracts disappeared. Jane's path into entertainment vanished. Mia's greatest friend post became negative press. In every case, the career consequences were swift and punishing. Social media collages labeled them canceled without verdict. Academic journals published "Cancel Culture and Survivors, a Toxic Mix." Across the news cycle, the collision of fame, trauma, and backlash showcased the devastating ripple effect of a high-profile trial on individual lives. Yet there are moments of resilience. Cassie told jurors she understood Combs's career was ruined, so maybe she found strength in ending that entanglement. Others launched advocacy pages and survivor networks. On Reddit, a private group, Diddy Survivors, sprouted, offering emotional support and sharing resume rebuilding tips. So while careers were torn down, community digital gardens started to grow. All these consequences, emotional, personal, career, are central to why this trial matters. The courtroom is more than just legal battlegrounds. It's a cultural spectacle, where every text, tattoo, timeline, and tweet feeds a conversation about power, choice, trauma, and legacy. Will these women's careers bounce back? Will they be reshaping narratives of consent and survival, or will they be forever defined by Combs's shadow? These questions aren't academic, they're urgent. They frame social media politics, legal reforms, and public empathy. They fuel drama surrounding hashtags like Mas Combs trial, victim resilience, and to cancel culture survivors. And they drive the tension in every video, every clip, every soundbite. You can feel it. Every testimony isn't just words, it's a weapon, a plea, a legacy. And whether these women's lives succeed or remain haunted, one thing is clear. This trial will ripple through how we treat survivors of powerful figures for years to come. The moment each woman chose to testify was seismic. Jane described how hearing Cassie's lawsuit kind of woke her up to the trauma she was in, a phrase she repeated on the stand. That simple admission, "It kind of woke me up," triggered dramatic ripples across social feeds. One viral TikTok clip captured the moment, captioned, "When your heart tells you it's time," and ignited debates on collective awakening. Some people commented, "That's the moment trauma stops, hiding." Others countered, "Performative healing or genuine courage?" The courtroom was no longer just a legal arena. It became a stage for survival stories and a battlefield for authenticity. Then there's the stunning legal pivot. Experts like Dr. Don Hughes gave voice to trauma mechanics, love bombing, financial control, psychological manipulation. That expert testimony reframed this from a celebrity scandal to a systemic issue. Victims often stay because survival demands it. It was academic drama in action. LinkedIn and legal forums buzzed with hard trauma theory watch. But the defense pushed back hard, dismissing it as theory theater, igniting fierce debates. Are psychological theories valid in federal court? One YouTube explainer titled, "When Trauma Meets Trial," hit over 1 million views in just days. The social web lit up with debate. Should courtroom empathy matter? Cassie's decision to go public with her lawsuit in November 2023 was also seismic. She admitted in court that when her lawsuit made headlines, she understood his career was ruined. A simple phrase, but it became a rallying cry. Across Twitter, #Speak Out Cassie trended, while TikTok lit up with thousands of users saying they, too, felt empowered to tell their truth. College classrooms watched clips, paused at that moment and asked, what does it take for a victim to speak when the system shields the powerful? It was a school of social science tearing into pop culture. But the hope for change wasn't just symbolic. Testimonies included allegations of forced labor, drug offenses, and even arson, criminal enterprise under RICO. By bringing these specifics into court, the prosecution wasn't just making a case against Diddy. They're challenging systems that allow abuse to hide under glamour. Online, legal journals published headlines, "Celebrity Power as Organized Crime," and "When Stardom Enables Exploitation." The internet erupted. Should agencies and labels be held accountable? Students started petitions demanding reform. This case is testing whether our justice system is ready to crack structures built for fame, not punishment. There was also tension between solidarity and cynicism. Some critics said the women participated willingly, but supporters countered loudly on platforms like Reddit and Twitter. Just because she smiled on Instagram doesn't mean she wasn't silenced behind closed doors. Hashtags like #YouArmoredSmile and Survival Smile went viral, sparking artwork and digital villager mobs debating what authenticity looks like. Psychological threads dissected microexpressions, further fueling the drama. Can you be on Instagram praising your abuser but still be enduring coercion? The answer seemed to hinge on whether empathy could wrap around complexity. Even the video of Diddy dragging Cassie emerged as pivotal evidence. Defense tried to minimize it, but prosecutors pushed for viewers to believe their lying eyes. That phrase became so viral it spun into memes, TikTok edits, and YouTube deep dives with titles like "Believe Your Lying Eyes," "The Diddy Corridor." Legal vloggers debated, can video evidence override contradictory testimony? Meanwhile, sociology classes replayed it to ask, What happens when recorded reality meets constructed narrative? The academic drama swelled as live commentary delved into consent and physicality in power dynamics. Jane's testimony offered another turning point. She described graphic coercion, forced sex even when vomiting, UTI risk from unprotected acts, the constant fear of sex tapes being shown to her child's parent. She said Combs threatened, "I'm going to show those tapes." The moment she shared that, a hush descended in the courtroom, and simultaneously, a digital storm. "Show the tape" went viral on Twitter for a day, people outraged at such coercion. But then conspiracy memes spun up, claiming it was all invented for shock. The academic discourse exploded. Is it possible for trauma testimonies to be manufactured for effect? Or is that just misogynistic dismissal? As the prosecution pulled together the threads, a tapestry of controlling behavior, coerced acts, emotional blackmail, the defense leaned heavily on cross-examination. They highlighted incongruities in testimony to say, not everything you hear in court is true. But the prosecutors stepped back and said, the choice to testify was brave. The inconsistencies do not erase the pattern. That narrative was powerful, enough that some social activists spun it into resilience in the face of doubt. YouTube tribunal influencers later published why survivors should still speak up, getting thousands of comments from survivors thanking them for courage. All these testimonies, hashtags, and deep dives coalesce into one central hope: systemic change. Voices online are asking for new industry accountability, calls to regulate power hierarchies in entertainment, better protections for subcontractors and young artists. They want NDAs that don't silence abuse, whistleblower protections that don't cost your career, and a system that doesn't force you to tweet your trauma before the system will listen. One viral petition gained over 200,000 signatures overnight. Lawyers started drafting model legislation. Academics began research grants. The sphere erupted. Will Diddy's case become a catalyst? Finally, on the stand, Jane said, "I was coerced even when I said no." That phrase became a social media lightning rod. People eloquently asked, does no always mean no if your fear means yes? The psychosocial tension is spilling into boardroom and social reform discussions. We're seeing fringe Twitter therapists, accounts explaining trauma bonding, while law professors are writing op-eds. What a celebrity sex trafficking trial reveals about collective denial. Academic journals responded with special editions. Blogs exploded when no doesn't mean no. This is no longer just gossip. It's public sociology, public psychology, public law, all mashed into one. As the prosecution prepares to lay out final arguments, the courtroom has already become a stage larger than any celebrity concert. Each witness wasn't just telling their story, they were demanding justice, shining light on systems that shield charisma and wealth. And in doing so, they've elevated hope, the hope that speaking up, even amid doubt, can prompt change. It's a cultural moment, a social reckoning that goes far beyond any verdict. Will Diddy's fate inspire industry reckoning, or will it revert to business as usual once the trial fades? The answer may depend on what happened in that courtroom, but more than that, it hinges on whether social media, legal reform, and public empathy can sustain the momentum. Because this is more than a trial. It's a flashpoint, a catalyst, and maybe the beginning of a new chapter in the way power is wielded and checked when someone speaks up. As the final gavel looms, the Shawn Diddy Combs trial leaves us standing at a crossroads of power, pain, and public perception. Over 20 days of testimony, cross-examination, viral courtroom moments, and emotional revelations have reshaped what we thought we knew. When Cassie stood and said, "When your lawsuit was publicized in November 2023, you understood that his career was ruined," it wasn't just a line in court, It was the moment a cultural reckoning took center stage. That admission alone sparked debates on Twitter and TikTok under Thatcher speak-up culture, forcing us to ask, what happens when the powerful are finally held accountable? But then comes the strange twist. Amid career-shattering headlines, Cassie's explicit texts, "I want to freak off," still circulated weeks later. Suddenly, the narrative fractures, survivor or accomplice. That jarring contradiction triggered academic drama across legal forums and psychology blogs, igniting threads like, "When texts rewrite truth." Scholars fiercely argued, can trauma explain inconsistency, or is inconsistency proof? One viral Reddit thread titled, "She texted him more after the lawsuit?" racked up thousands of comments, reflecting the public's struggle between empathy and skepticism. Every witness who took that stand brought a different weight. Jane's description of forced sex, vomit, UTIs, and tape threats unveiled the dark corners of coercion. When she testified, Combs said, "I'm going to show those tapes." It wasn't just domestic violence. It was extortion. That phrase became a media battleground. Some called it excessive drama, while legal experts pushed back. Coercion via tape threats fits straight into the definition of criminal enterprise, and thus, hashtags like #tape coercion trended for hours, yet contradictions abounded. Brianna tattooed the date of an alleged 17-story balcony incident as a sobering act, only to reveal when cross-examined that Combs was purportedly across the country at the time. A punchline for some, a token of trauma for others. Online, it split camps. Is trauma memory reliable or a liability? On Instagram, advice influencers wrote pop psych threads like tattooing trauma, symbolic healing, or memory trap. The CEO's debate cascaded through university ethics debates and legal seminars faster than any mainstream headline. Ultimately, the defense pointed to every ounce of inconsistency. They picked apart Cassie's timeline, Brianna's location, Dawn's Pan V's egg. Story, Mia's post-assault praise, Jane's continued contact, even cover-ups of alleged drug and kidnapping elements. Each was a nail in the coffin of credibility. Yet in every contradiction, the prosecution found a lifeline: the underlying pattern of coercion, control, and trauma bonding. And at the center of it all stood the video. Combs, dragging Cassie down a hotel hallway, towel fluttering, fists swinging. The defense tried to ignore it. Prosecutors shouted, "Believe your lying eyes!" The phrase became a rallying cry on YouTube legal dramas, turning that hallway into a symbol of public reckoning. But what does it all mean after the trial? If Combs is convicted, victory will belong not just to the prosecution, but to those who broke their silence. For Cassie, Brianna, Jane, Mia, and Dawn, it will be validation. For other survivors, it will be proof that even the mightiest can be held to account. The trial thus becomes more than a celebrity scandal. It evolves into a lightning rod for systemic change. Social justice advocates are already mobilizing, drafting legislative proposals to limit exploitative NDAs and expand protections for young people in entertainment. Hashtags like "No Silencing Survivors" and "Protect the Vulnerable" have skyrocketed. Even conversations around consent have shifted. When Jane testified, she had said no, yet was forced. Academic circles erupted. When no isn't no, understanding. Coercion through power imbalance. This phrase went viral as a short video animation used in college consent classes and corporate training sessions. Some legal commentators questioned if the jury would grasp this nuance. But online educators applauded. One moment, one phrase, changed consent education forever. Of course, not everyone agrees. Critics argue the dissociation between public facade and private horror is too convenient, that this trial is breeding. A wave of "he said," she said, pop justice. Free speech advocates tweeted about ruling by spectacle. Legal scholars debated whether emotional narratives can overshadow objective evidence. One scathing Medium article titled, "From Celebrity, Trial to Pop Psych Circus," went viral in think tank circles, and yet what can't be denied is the momentum. The public insists that inconsistencies shouldn't erase credibility when a persistent pattern exists. At the same time, the trial has forced introspection within the entertainment industry. Big labels, talent managers, and film studios are watching closely. Some insiders have quietly begun rethinking NDAs and talent contracts, better mental health support, harsher exit protocols for incidents of coercion. One major agency even tweeted a statement promising to reassess policies to protect against abuse. Whether this reaction lasts is anyone's guess, but the conversation is happening, and that's progress. And then there's the broader question: will society stay focused or move on? That's where the hope, or fear, lies. Every media cycle offers a distraction. Will this trial become just another fading headline in celebrity gossip? Or will it be a milestone? Already, student groups are holding forums, classroom curricula adapting the trial's lessons, and nonprofit watchdogs are forming alliances aimed at transforming how power dynamics operate in entertainment. Let's circle back to the emotional core. Every woman who spoke up did so, knowing the world would disbelieve them a little. They knew every phrase, pause, or lack thereof would be dissected endlessly online and offline. Cassie with her texts, Brianna with her tattoo and timeline, Jane with her explicit testimony, Mia with her Instagram praise, Dawn with her skillet. Story, they each trusted that speaking out, messily, vulnerably, publicly, was worth it. That act should never be discounted. Now their combined voices stand at the threshold of change. This trial is not just about Diddy. It's about whether our justice and cultural systems can handle complexity, trauma and memory, fame and fear, power and pain. If the verdict sees Combs held accountable, it will be a legal bellwether. Power can be prosecuted. If not, but the cultural impact endures, it may still seed long-term transformation. Whatever happens, the real story isn't the verdict. It's the public awakening. It's the moment an empire of fame got cracked by voices that shattered its facade. And behind that cracking facade is a new world. One where survivors don't have to choose between silence and spectacle, where accountability doesn't require viral hashtags, and where moral complexity doesn't override emotional truth. In the end, the courtroom may decide Diddy's fate. But the world has already shifted. And that shift, fueled by testimony, texts, trauma, and hope, could resonate far longer than any one trial. This is where we stand, not just awaiting a verdict, but witnessing a potential turning point in how we see power, consent, memory, and justice in our culture.